my name is Bailey Jarvis, and the mini lesson I'll be going over today is on global warming. As we can see from our title screen here, I'm going to go on to the next slide. This is our objective slide, what the students will learn from this presentation. That is how global warming works, the signs of global warming, different global warming gases, and what they can do to help out this issue. Move on to the next slide. And this slide has two questions on it. What are the signs of global warming, and what are the gases that cause global warming? We also have a picture of the Earth here that has a link attached to it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that now. Alright, where this link has brought us is an interactive that is through Discovery. And right here, the first page says, strange things are happening on Earth. More powerful superstorms, mega droughts, massive fires, and melting polar ice caps. Scientists believe that all of these unavoidable events point to a climate change of unimaginable proportions. What exactly is happening? What does it mean, and what can we do? Explore our comprehensive interactive to uncover the signs of global warming, understand its sources, and see how it impacts you. So the first thing we're going to do is to go to signs, and as soon as I rest my mouse over it, we get a cascade of options: polar meltdown, sea level rising, air temperature, sea temperatures, permafrost, thawing, and unhealthy conditions. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the first one here, polar meltdown. That'll bring us to 12 other options, and each of these circles is one thing you can click on. I'm going to go ahead and click on this one here, Peninsula Melts. A recent and exhaustive aerial and satellite study published in the journal Science found that 87% of the 244 coastal glaciers on the Antarctic Peninsula have retreated over the past 50 years. In the 1950s, only those at the northern tip of the peninsula were retreating, but that trend has spread south, it now appears. And really what these do is they give a very good graphic image of data, and then they explain that data as I just read. And right here we have the retreat during the summer and the advance during the winter, and it's clear to see that the retreat far outweighs the advance. Click on another one, sudden collapse. New research shows Greenland's coastal glaciers are now retreating many meters per year and disgorging ice into the sea at several times their normal rates. We don't think these are just bursts, said Eric Rignot of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory and the California Institute of Technology. We haven't seen any of these glaciers coming back to normal. And here it shows the retreat over the last 100 years of this particular glacier. What's really worrisome about this glacier melting at the poles is that while the glaciers are on continental land, they're not adding to the sea level. But as soon as that ice or that melted water flows into the ocean, it rises sea level. And that brings us to our next sign, sea level rising. If I hover over Key West here, it says, sea level here appears to be rising at 2.2 millimeters per year, almost the global average of 3 millimeters per year. Key West, like most parts of nearby mainland Florida, sits atop a limestone platform that is neither sinking nor rising, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. That said, sea level is still rising, and all of southern Florida is a common target for hurricanes. So what's really important to note here is that it sits atop a limestone platform. So the continent here is not sinking or rising. So the only way that the sea level here is rising is because the ocean level has risen. Due to the sake of time, I'm going to move on to some sources. Fossil fuels is a huge one. Coal, for example, is behind 93% of the carbon dioxide emissions from U.S. electrical generation. Getting around. This shows the transportation effect on our CO2 emissions, which has gone up staggeringly in just the past 40 years or so. Big players. This compares our greenhouse emissions to the other countries, and it's clear to see that we far outweigh even our next competitor in this area, Japan. And what this really shows is that we have a lot to learn from our other countries on perhaps how to control our own CO2 and greenhouse emissions. I'm going to look again. These are the major signs: polar meltdown, sea level rising, temperatures, and permafrost thawing. And sources, the three major ones here: fossil fuels, water vapor, and methane. I'm going to go into methane. Methane is not as great of a quantity as CO2 emissions, but methane itself is highly more adept at holding in energy, so it's actually worse than putting CO2 into the atmosphere. And a huge part of methane emissions is our agriculture and our raising of cattle and just the sheer amount of cattle we have. Alright, I'm going to go back now to our slides. Take out a pen. And I'm just going to answer these questions here. Usually I'd have a student come up and do this, but as I have none here, I'm going to do it myself. Signs of global warming. Well, we have my computer will register here. Alright, we have polar ice melt, sea level rise, temperature, and permafrost thaw. Alright, and gases, the three main ones were CO2, water vapor, and methane. Alright, and moving on to the next slide. This is where I use the screen, as I didn't want students to know what this question was going to be about. It just says click here to view video, so I am going to do that. Where this link brings us to is Global Warming 101. It's a video put out by National Geographic, and I'm going to go ahead and let it play.
For 2.5 million years, the Earth's climate has fluctuated, cycling from ice ages to warmer periods. But in the last century, the planet's temperature has risen unusually fast, about 1.2 to 1 Fahrenheit. Scientists believe it's human activity that's driving the temperatures up, a process known as global warming. Ever since the Industrial Revolution began, factories, power plants, and eventually cars burn fossil fuels such as oil and coal, releasing huge amounts of carbon dioxide and other gases into the atmosphere. These greenhouse gases trap heat near the Earth through a naturally occurring process called the greenhouse effect. The greenhouse effect begins with the sun and the energy it radiates to the Earth. The Earth